My husband's secretary sent a lingerie photo during our anniversary dinner. Can't wait for tomorrow's private meeting. I forwarded it to the restaurant's display screen during his toast. The champagne glass slipped from his hand as 200 guests witnessed his secret life unfold in high definition. The champagne glass slipped from Christian's hand as the lingerie photo of his secretary flashed across the massive display screen behind him. 200 guests at the Harrington Hotel's grand ballroom collectively gasped. I remained seated, my hand still on my phone, watching 5 years of marriage disintegrate in high definition. Can't wait for tomorrow's private meeting, the message from Ashley read beneath the photo, displayed 12 feet tall for Boston's entire social elite to see. If you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my daily stories of life-changing confrontations and powerful transformations. Now let's get started. Exactly 3 minutes earlier, I'd been the perfect wife. Julia Matthews, smiling adoringly at my husband while he worked the room at our anniversary celebration. The event I'd spent 3 months planning down to the last gardenia in every centerpiece. I'd selected the 1942 Dom Perignon, his favorite vintage. I'd personally approved the 7-course menu featuring Maine lobster. I'd even hired a string quartet to play our wedding song when he made his toast. Christian hadn't noticed when my smile froze. I'd reached for his phone when it buzzed beside his untouched dessert. A courtesy, really. He was busy charming the Whitmores, potential investors for Matthews Consulting. Your phone, honey, I'd said, lifting it. That's when I saw her name. Ashley. The lock screen preview showed just enough. A flash of black lace and pale skin. I'll take that, Christian had said, plucking it from my hand with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Probably work. But I'd seen enough. My fingers trembled as I excused myself, claiming I needed to check on the dessert service. Instead, I locked myself in a bathroom stall and opened my own phone. Our accounts were synced. His idea, ironically. So we can always find each other's phones, he'd said when we got married. I hadn't considered it might someday let me find something else entirely. The messages loaded instantly. Not just today's photo. Dozens of them. Dating back 11 months. Meeting confirmations. Hotel reservations. Photos I could never unsee. The conference in Chicago ran late. One of his messages read from April. The conference when I'd sent flowers to his hotel room because I missed him. She's at her mother's this weekend. Come over. Another from July, during my trip to coordinate the governor's fundraiser. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone into the toilet. A strange calm washed over me as the pieces clicked into place. The late nights, the weekend emergencies, the sudden promotion of 24-year-old Ashley from intern to executive assistant with the corner office. Julia. Charlotte Morgan's voice echoed in the bathroom. Richard's wife. Christian's business partner's wife. The toast is about to start, dear. I'd smiled at her, reapplied my lipstick. I'll be right there. As I walked back, memory fragments bombarded me. Christian insisting Ashley attend our Christmas party. Christian mentioning her incredible attention to detail. The way his eyes lingered on her at company functions. How had I been so blind? There you are, Christian had said, pulling out my chair. Everything perfect enough for you yet? The familiar teasing about my perfectionism. Once endearing, now hollow. The wait staff filled crystal flutes with champagne. The string quartet quieted. The massive screen behind the head table transitioned to our wedding photo. My parents beamed from the front table. Christian rose, glass in hand. I want to thank everyone for celebrating with us tonight, he began. His voice carried through the state-of-the-art sound system I'd specified in my event plan. 5 years ago, I made the best decision of my life. The room was silent, captivated by my husband's charisma. Even now, watching his performance, I had to admire his skill. The perfect businessman. The perfect husband. Except he wasn't. My fingers moved before my brain fully formed the plan. The AV system. I'd coordinated the installation with the hotel 2 years ago. They still used the same login credentials. A careless oversight in their security I suddenly appreciated. Julia teaches me every day about honesty, Christian continued as I accessed the system from my phone. About transparency. I selected Ashley's photo from the message thread. Transparency indeed. To my beautiful wife, Christian raised his glass. Here's to many more years of trust, Anne. That's when I hit send. When his glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. When the murmurs began. When Senator Wilson's wife covered her daughter's eyes. Julia, what the hell? Christian whispered frantically, his face draining of color as he recognized the image. As he recognized the words beneath it. Can't wait for tomorrow's private meeting. I stood slowly, straightening the midnight blue dress I'd spent weeks selecting. I believe your secretary already has your schedule for tomorrow covered, I said, loud enough for the front tables to hear. I watched, detached, as Christian lunged for his phone, as if he could somehow delete what 200 people were already seeing. His mother covered her mouth in horror. My father half rose from his seat, confusion morphing into understanding, then rage. Turn it off. Christian hissed at me, grabbing my arm. This isn't what it looks like. That's strange, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. It looks exactly like your secretary in lingerie you purchased with our joint credit card last month. The La Perla set, right? $1,500? You told me that charge was for client gifts. The event staff scrambled to shut down the display. Too late. Phones were already out. Boston's elite capturing the moment. Christian Matthews, rising star in financial consulting, was exposed. Not just the affair. The lies, the betrayal, the disrespect of doing this on our anniversary. You've ruined everything, Christian said, his grip tightening on my arm. I looked down at his hand, then back at his face. 5 years of memories flashed through my mind. Our wedding day, buying our Beacon Hill brownstone holidays, dinners, promises. No, Christian, I replied, removing his hand from my arm. You did that all by yourself. I turned away from him, from the wreckage of champagne and crystal and marriage, and walked out of the ballroom. Behind me the chaos crescendoed, shouting, crying, the symphony of a public implosion. I made it to the hotel lobby before the first tear fell. Not from sadness but from something closer to relief. The weight of perfection, of being Christian Matthews' flawless wife, suddenly lifted. Shattered like his champagne glass on the ballroom floor. Through the lobby windows I could see camera flashes. Tomorrow's headlines taking shape. My world collapsing in real time. But for the first time in years I could breathe. The hotel doors swung open behind me as I stood in the crisp autumn air, my breath forming small clouds in the October night. The sounds of chaos still echoed from the ballroom, a symphony of scandal. My phone vibrated incessantly in my clutch, but I couldn't face the messages yet. Mrs. Matthews? The valet approached cautiously, concern etched on his young face. Would you like me to bring your car around? I almost laughed. My car was at home. Christian had insisted we arrive together in his new Tesla. It makes the right impression, he'd said. Always about impressions. No thank you. I'll call a ride. Before I could reach for my phone, the hotel doors burst open again. Christian stormed out, his face contorted with rage, followed by 2 security guards in black suits. You think this is funny? He shouted, attracting stares from guests arriving for other events. You've just destroyed everything we've built. The security guards flanked him, one speaking quietly into his earpiece. Sir, please lower your voice. Christian shrugged them off, advancing toward me. Do you have any idea what you've done? The Whitmore deal was practically signed. Richard's livid. I stepped back, maintaining distance between us. Interesting that your first concern is business, not our marriage. Our marriage. He laughed bitterly. Our marriage is a business arrangement, Julia. It always has been. Your family's connections, my ambition. It worked perfectly until you decided to have your little meltdown. The words stung more than I expected. Deep down, I'd known our relationship had become transactional, but hearing him say it so coldly shattered something final inside me. Mr. Matthews, the larger security guard intervened, we've called you a car. It's in your best interest to leave separately from your wife tonight. Christian straightened his tie, suddenly aware of the small crowd gathering. Always conscious of appearances even now. This isn't over, he said quietly, his voice dropping to that controlled tone I recognized from difficult client negotiations. As his car pulled away, hotel guests began filtering out of the ballroom. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared openly. I recognized the Wilsons, the Pearsons, board members from Christian's firm. Faces I'd served dinner to, people whose children's birthdays I'd remembered with gifts. Charlotte Morgan approached, Richard hovering awkwardly behind her. Julia, darling, she began, reaching for my hands. I pulled away. Don't. Her expression shifted, pity mixed with something else. Guilt. How long have you known? I asked. Charlotte glanced back at Richard, who suddenly became very interested in his phone. Julia, these things are complicated. That's not an answer. She sighed. The Christmas party. I saw them in Richard's office. I told Richard to speak with Christian, but... She trailed off. 9 months. They'd known for 9 months and said nothing. Every lunch, every charity committee meeting, every time Charlotte had asked about our anniversary plans, she'd known. I hope she was worth it, I said quietly. Not just for Christian. For all of you who decided my dignity wasn't worth the uncomfortable conversation. Richard stepped forward. Julia, you have to understand in our position. In your position, you protected a predator who sleeps with his subordinates, at the expense of someone you claimed was a friend. My voice remained steady, surprising even myself. I understand perfectly. They retreated, whispering to each other. One by one, guests filtered past. Some offered awkward condolences. Others pretended not to see me. The social mapping was immediate and clarifying. Who paused with genuine concern, who hurried by with averted eyes. My phone buzzed again. My mother this time. I let it go to voicemail. Mrs. Matthews? A woman in a sleek pantsuit approached, hand extended. Melissa Winters, Boston Globe. I vaguely recognized her from local society coverage. I'm not giving statements tonight. I understand. She lowered her voice. But you should know, Ashley Daniels isn't the first. I've been investigating Matthews Consulting for months. There's a pattern. My stomach tightened. What kind of pattern? 3 secretaries in 5 years. All young, all promoted rapidly, all suddenly pursuing other opportunities after about a year. She handed me her card. When you're ready to talk, call me. And you might want to check your husband's encrypted emails. The password is usually your anniversary. Men like him are predictable that way. She melted back into the crowd before I could respond. I stared at her card, turning it over in my fingers. A town car pulled up and the driver called my name. I hadn't ordered one. Compliments of the hotel, Mrs. Matthews, the valet explained. The manager thought you might prefer privacy. I slid into the back seat, giving the driver my address. As we pulled away, I opened my laptop, the one I'd brought to show anniversary photos during the dinner. The one that, like our phones, was synced to our home network. Melissa's tip about the password worked on the first try. October 15th, 19. Our wedding date. The encrypted folder opened, revealing hundreds of emails between Christian and the firm's attorneys. Divorce papers drafted 3 months ago. Financial strategies for minimizing settlements. A timeline that coincided perfectly with the Whitmore acquisition. He'd planned to leave once the deal closed and he made partner. Most damning was an email from last week. Julia's family connections have served their purpose. Once the Whitmore deal closes, we can proceed with separation. Her father's position on the board won't matter once I have controlling interest. I was an investment that had matured. A stepping stone he no longer needed. Additional emails detailed the severance packages of 2 women before Ashley. Non-disclosure agreements. Generous payments from the company's discretionary fund that I helped manage. I'd been financing my husband's affairs. As the car turned onto Beacon Hill, my phone rang again. A local number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Matthews? This is David from technical support at Harrington Hotel. I thought you should know. The footage from tonight is already online. I'm sorry, we tried to contain it. Of course it was. In the age of smartphones, nothing remained private. By morning, everyone would have seen everything. Strangely, I felt no additional shame. The worst had already happened. The secret was out. What remained was what to do with this newfound terrible freedom. The car pulled up to our brownstone. Lights blazed inside. Christian had beaten me home. I instructed the driver to keep going. Where to, ma'am? He asked. For the first time in 5 years, the answer wasn't predetermined by someone else's expectations. The Fairmont, I decided. I need a room for the night. And time to plan my next move. The Fairmont's presidential suite felt both luxurious and lonely. I'd booked it on impulse. If I was going to fall apart, I might as well do it with a view of Boston Common. But morning arrived with surprising clarity instead of the emotional collapse I'd expected. I sat cross-legged on the king-sized bed, surrounded by printouts of Christian's emails. A night of sleepless investigation had revealed more than infidelity. It had exposed a calculated business strategy with me as a disposable asset. My phone rang for the 20th time since dawn. Christian again. I silenced it and dialed another number instead. Jensen Security, a crisp voice answered. This is Julia Matthews. I need the security codes changed at 42 Acorn Street immediately. Of course, Mrs. Matthews. We have you authorized on the account. Any specific preferences for the new code? I glanced at Christian's emails. October 15, 26. The date he planned to file for divorce. Done. Would you like us to inform Mr. Matthews of the change? No thank you. I'll handle that personally. I gathered my things and checked out, instructing the concierge to have a locksmith meet me at the brownstone. The ride across Boston gave me time to prepare mentally. This wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of something else entirely. The brownstone sat quiet and empty when I arrived. Christian hadn't returned after discovering his key card deactivated, likely sleeping at his club or with Ashley. The locksmith made quick work of the physical locks, handing me new keys with a sympathetic nod. Read about it online, he said gruffly. My ex did something similar. You're better off without him. Word had spread faster than I'd anticipated. By noon I'd secured the house, activated the new security system, and ensured Christian could not enter without my permission. A small victory but empowering nonetheless. I was examining financial records in Christian's office when the pounding started. Julia. Open the damn door. Christian's voice echoed through the entryway. This is ridiculous. I approached cautiously, activating the recording app on my phone before speaking through the intercom. The house is in both our names, Christian. You're welcome to contact your attorney about access. My attorney? Are you serious? His voice cracked with disbelief. After your little stunt last night, you're lucky I haven't called mine. Do you have any idea what you've done to my reputation? I leaned against the door. About the same thing you did to our marriage, I imagine. Let me in. We need to talk like adults. We're talking. And I'm recording this conversation for my protection. Pause. Then his voice softened dangerously. Jules, please. It was a mistake. Ashley meant nothing, it was just physical. You and I have built a life together. I remained silent, recording his performance. Think about what this does to your career, he continued. Your clients won't want their event planner involved in a public scandal. Your mother's charity board will ask you to step down. Is that what you want? To throw everything away over one indiscretion? When I didn't respond, his tone shifted again. Fine. You want to play hardball? I made you Julia. Your little event planning business was nothing before my connections. Your family might have the name, but I gave you legitimacy. Nobody will hire you after this. Each threat, each manipulation tactic recorded clearly on my phone. Evidence of who Christian Matthews truly was. Your father's position on the board can't protect you, he continued, unaware he was digging his own grave. I've got enough on him to ensure he stays out of this. That caught my attention. What did he have on my father? I returned to Christian's office, searching files with new purpose. In his private safe, the combination unchanged since our wedding, I found a USB drive labeled Matthews Insurance. The contents were enlightening. Documentation of my father's role in covering up a harassment suit 5 years ago. The pieces fell into place. Why my family had been so insistent I marry Christian despite the age difference. Why they'd pressured me to plan events showcasing his firm. I wasn't just Christian's stepping stone. I was my family's shield. My phone rang again, my mother this time. I answered, still processing my discovery. Julia Elizabeth Matthews, what were you thinking? Her voice dripped with controlled fury. Do you have any idea the position you've put this family in? Hello to you too, mother. Don't be flippant. Your father is fielding calls from every board member. The Whitmores have withdrawn their investment interest. All because you couldn't handle a private matter privately. I clutched the USB drive. You knew, didn't you? About Ashley? About the others? Her silence confirmed it. Matthews women manage these matters privately, she finally said. Your grandmother did. I did. That's how families like ours survive. You air your dirty laundry in public and suddenly generations of respect disappear. Generations of silence, you mean? Generations of women looking the other way while their husbands do whatever they want. Don't be dramatic. It's a simple transaction. They provide security and position, we provide discretion and stability. And what about happiness, mother? Does that factor into this transaction? She sighed. Happiness is a luxury, Julia. Security is a necessity. I ended the call, my hands shaking. Even my own mother considered my dignity a reasonable sacrifice for social standing. Outside, Christian had finally given up pounding and resorted to sitting on the steps, creating a spectacle for our neighbors. I watched him through the security camera, this man I thought I knew, wondering how I'd missed the signs for so long. I dialed the number on Melissa Winters' card, reaching her voicemail. Ms. Winters, this is Julia Matthews. I believe I have information relevant to your investigation. Call me. My next call was to Samantha Devine, whose reputation for handling high-profile divorces with lethal precision had earned her the nickname, the Executioner, in legal circles. Mrs. Matthews, she answered directly. I've been expecting your call. Of course she had. Boston's legal elite would be circling like sharks. I need a divorce, I said simply. Just a divorce? Her voice held a knowing edge. Or justice. I looked at the evidence spread across the desk. Financial records showing company funds used for personal gifts, emails plotting his business coup using my family connections, documentation of systematic harassment. Both, I decided. And I have everything you need to get it. Come to my office tomorrow 9 a.m. Bring everything. And Mrs. Matthews? Change your bank passwords immediately. As I hung up, Christian's final pounding assault on the door began. This isn't over, Julia, he shouted. You'll regret this. I walked to the window, making myself visible to him. No, Christian, I said, though he couldn't hear me through the glass. For the first time in 5 years, it's actually just beginning. I closed the curtains on his reddened face, turning back to the documentation of his betrayal, the foundation of our life together cracking beyond repair. 3 weeks passed in a blur of legal depositions, frantic phone calls, and sleepless nights. The divorce proceedings had begun with spectacular acrimony, Christian's legal team painting me as an emotionally unstable woman who had orchestrated a public humiliation over a simple misunderstanding. My social media accounts filled with both support and vitriol, strangers taking sides in a private catastrophe turned public spectacle. I sat in the back room of Julia's Cafe on Newbury Street, nervously arranging packets on each chair. Tonight marked my first public appearance since the incident, not as Christian Matthews' wife, but as founder of the newly established Boston Workplace Justice Initiative. The projector's set up, Melissa Winters said, testing the connection. The Boston Globe reporter had become an unexpected confidant, her investigation into Matthews Consulting now an ongoing series that had gained national attention. Are you ready for this? No, I admitted, straightening a stack of brochures. But I'm doing it anyway. The room gradually filled. Mostly women, some I recognized from Christian's firm, others strangers who had reached out after reading Melissa's articles. In the back row sat Samantha Devine, my attorney, her expression betraying nothing as she observed the gathering. At 7 p.m. sharp, I stepped to the podium, hands trembling against the wooden surface. Thank you for coming, I began, voice steadier than I felt. 3 weeks ago my life imploded in public. What started as a private betrayal became something larger when I discovered I wasn't alone. I gestured to a slide showing the statistics Melissa had uncovered. 17 women who had held executive assistant positions at Matthews Consulting over 8 years. 13 who had left abruptly with generous severance packages and ironclad NDAs. This isn't about my failed marriage, I continued. It's about a pattern of behavior that companies protect and society ignores. Tonight is about changing that narrative. As I spoke, I noticed a commotion at the door. 2 women entered, glancing around nervously. I recognized them immediately from photos in Christian's personnel files. Elizabeth Hadley and Monica Chin, his previous executive assistants before Ashley. We'd like to speak, Elizabeth said when I paused. If that's all right. Their testimonies were devastating. Detailed accounts of manipulation, inappropriate advances, implied professional consequences for resisting. Monica described being relocated to a different department after refusing a weekend trip. Elizabeth explained how her promotion came with unexpected requirements that she eventually rejected, resulting in her abrupt departure. I signed the NDA because I needed the severance, Elizabeth explained. But seeing what happened to you, Mrs. Matthews, I can't stay silent anymore. As the evening continued, more stories emerged. Not just about Christian, but about a pervasive culture across Boston's financial district. By the end, we had formed committees, created resource lists, and established a legal defense fund for women fighting workplace harassment. The next morning, the Boston Business Journal ran the headline, "Matthews Scandal Spawns Movement. Former Executive's Wife Leads Workplace Reform Initiative." Beneath it, a photo of me surrounded by Christian's former employees. Christian's response came swiftly. A press release citing tremendous work pressure and temporary personal difficulties as explanations for his isolated lapse in judgment. His attorney released a statement claiming I had orchestrated the entire scandal to extract a larger divorce settlement. Most painful was the suggestion that my inability to have children had created emotional instability that led to my disproportionate reaction to a minor indiscretion. I read his statement in my attorney's office, a strange calm settling over me. "He's desperate," Samantha observed. "The SEC investigation has him cornered." The financial evidence I'd discovered had triggered a formal inquiry into Matthews Consulting's accounting practices. Christian's plans to establish a competing firm with diverted client funds now faced serious scrutiny, with the SEC freezing several accounts pending investigation. "How are you holding up?" Samantha asked, setting aside legal documents. "I've been better," I admitted. "The Brookline Country Club regretfully revoked my membership yesterday. Apparently, my presence would create an uncomfortable atmosphere for certain members." Samantha nodded sympathetically. The social fallout is often harder than the legal battle. Who you lose tells you everything about who they really are. The losses mounted daily. My mother's charity board requested I take a hiatus from planning their annual gala. Dinner invitations ceased. Former friends crossed the street to avoid conversation. My event planning business lost 3 major clients, all with connections to Christian's firm. I didn't realize how much of my identity was tied to being Christian's wife, I confessed. "It's like I'm having to figure out who Julia is without him." "And who is she?" Samantha asked. I had no immediate answer. That afternoon, a call came from a number I didn't recognize. "Julia Matthews," I answered, expecting another reporter. "Mrs. Matthews, this is David Carson." The name triggered immediate recognition. Christian's former college roommate who had started a competing consulting firm. They'd had a falling out years ago over what Christian had described as business differences. "Mr. Carson, what can I do for you?" "I've been following your workplace initiative," he said. "It's impressed a lot of people, myself included." "Thank you," I replied cautiously, wondering about his motives. "I'll be direct. My firm is expanding our corporate ethics division, focusing on workplace culture and employee advocacy. We need someone who understands both the executive world and has the courage to challenge it. I'd like to offer you a position heading that division." I nearly dropped the phone. "Mr. Carson, with all due respect, is this offer somehow related to your history with my husband?" His laugh was genuine. "Partly, I admit. Christian always underestimated everyone around him, especially the women in his life. But this isn't about him. It's about what you've demonstrated these past weeks. Resilience, strategic thinking, and moral clarity. Those are rare qualities in our industry." "I'm not in your industry," I pointed out. "Exactly why we need you. Fresh perspective from someone who's seen the damage toxic corporate culture can cause. Think about it at least." After he hung up, I stood by the window of my brownstone, the home Christian's attorneys were fighting to claim, and watched the sunset over Boston. For the first time in weeks, possibilities rather than losses filled my thoughts. My phone rang again. The Fairmont Hotel, wondering if I was available to coordinate their holiday charity event. Their first since breaking ties with Matthews Consulting. "We admire how you've handled yourself," the events director said. "Our board feels you represent the values we want associated with our brand." By evening, 2 more calls came with similar sentiments. Former clients choosing sides and choosing mine. Standing in my kitchen, I realized something was shifting. The world Christian and I had built was indeed crumbling, but from its ashes, something entirely new, something authentically mine, was emerging. Not Julia Matthews, executive wife, but Julia Matthews, advocate and rebuilder. I opened my laptop and began drafting a formal response to David Carson's offer, feeling for the first time since that anniversary dinner, genuinely hopeful about what tomorrow might bring. 6 months to the day after Christian's champagne glass shattered on the floor of the Harrington Hotel ballroom, I stood in the same space, surveying the transformation. The hotel's restaurant reopening gala was my first major society event since the divorce was finalized, and my return to the scene where everything had imploded felt poetically appropriate. "Everything is perfect, Mrs. Matthews," the hotel manager assured me, clipboard in hand. "Your vision for the redesign exceeded our expectations." I nodded, appreciating his deliberate use of my married name, which I'd chosen to keep, not out of sentimentality, but because I'd rebuilt my reputation under it. Christian had been furious about this decision, as he'd been about so many things over the past half-year. "The bar needs additional lighting," I noted, making a small adjustment to the table arrangements. "And please ensure the presentation screen is tested thoroughly." The manager smiled, catching my reference to that fateful night. "Already done." Twice. As guests began arriving, I retreated to a quiet corner, observing Boston's elite in their natural habitat. Many who had shunned me initially now approached with air kisses and compliments, social weather vanes shifting with the changing winds of public opinion. The SEC investigation into Matthews Consulting had revealed financial improprieties far beyond what even I had discovered, vindication that came with its own complex emotions. "Julia." A familiar voice behind me sent a chill down my spine. I turned slowly to face Christian, thinner than I remembered, the confident gleam in his eyes dimmed. His once impeccable suit hung slightly loose on his frame. "You look well," he said, his voice softened with what I once would have mistaken for sincerity. "Thank you. I didn't expect to see you here." He glanced around, clearly aware of the watchful eyes. "I thought we could talk. Privately. We have nothing to discuss that our attorneys haven't already covered. This isn't about legal matters." He lowered his voice. "I've been in therapy. Real therapy, not the corporate counseling nonsense. I've been doing the work, Jules." The nickname landed like a stone in my stomach. "I'm glad for you," I replied evenly. "But that doesn't change anything between us. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible mistakes." His eyes glistened with what appeared to be genuine tears. "But people can change. I've changed." For a moment, I felt the pull of the familiar, the charismatic man who had once convinced me he hung the moon. Then I remembered the recordings provided by Elizabeth and Monica, transcripts of nearly identical conversations where Christian had promised transformation, offered tearful apologies, only to repeat his behavior with the next woman. "Your therapy records were submitted in the Lewis case," I said quietly, referring to the workplace harassment lawsuit where I'd testified the previous month. "You've said these exact words before, Christian." "To Elizabeth." "To Monica." "Word for word." His expression hardened momentarily before recovering. "That was different. They weren't you. What we had was real. What we had was a transaction." I echoed my mother's cold assessment. "Your ambition, my family connections. You said it yourself outside this very hotel." I was angry. "People say things they don't mean when they're angry." "On the contrary," I replied, "I think anger reveals what people truly mean but usually have the restraint to conceal." Before he could respond, David Carson approached, placing a protective hand on my elbow. "Christian," he acknowledged coolly. "I didn't expect to see you here, given the circumstances." Christian's gaze flickered between us, understanding dawning. "So the rumors are true. You two are colleagues," I interjected firmly. "Mr. Carson has been an invaluable mentor during my transition to corporate ethics consulting." "How convenient for both of you," Christian replied, bitterness edging his tone. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised by your opportunism, David. You always did know how to capitalize on other people's misfortunes." David remained unruffled. "Julia's expertise stands on its own merits. Her testimony in the Lewis case has changed how half the firms in Boston approach workplace policies." Christian's jaw tightened. The Lewis case had established a precedent in Massachusetts corporate law regarding executive abuse of power, with my testimony and evidence playing a crucial role. The resulting judgment had accelerated the downward spiral of his once meteoric career. "If you'll excuse me," Christian said stiffly, "I see some colleagues I should greet." As he retreated, David squeezed my arm gently. "You handled that beautifully." "Practice makes perfect," I murmured, watching Christian disappear into the crowd. Though I didn't expect him to approach me so publicly. "Desperation makes people bold," David observed. "Have you read today's journal?" I shook my head. The board voted. He's out as managing partner. The SEC findings were too damning to ignore. The news settled over me with surprising gentleness. 6 months ago it would have felt like victory. Now it just felt like the inevitable conclusion to a story I was no longer invested in. The event proceeded flawlessly, a testament to my professional rebirth. As I circulated among guests, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can we meet? I have information you should see. Ashley." I stepped into the quiet hallway to call her, curious rather than angry. "Ashley, it's Julia Matthews. Thank you for calling back." Her voice sounded different than I'd imagined, deeper, less confident. "I've been trying to find the courage to reach out for months. What information do you have?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? The Common Grounds Cafe on Boylston at 2. I agreed, disconnecting with a strange sense of anticipation. The following afternoon I found Ashley nervous and diminished, nothing like the confident seductress I'd imagined. She slid a USB drive across the table without preamble. "Voice recordings and emails," she explained. "He said he'd ruin my career if I didn't cooperate. That no one would believe me over him." I stared at the small device. "Why show me this now?" "Your testimony in the Lewis case. You mentioned a pattern." Her eyes met mine, vulnerable and determined. "I'm part of that pattern, but not how you think. I was trapped, not willing." The realization shifted something fundamental in my understanding. The woman I'd blamed, the other woman I'd resented, had been another victim in Christian's power plays. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "I made assumptions I shouldn't have." "We both did," she replied quietly. 2 weeks later, I hosted a small dinner in my newly purchased Beacon Hill apartment. Not the brownstone tied to Christian's life, but a space entirely my own. Around the table sat the people who had emerged as my authentic circle. Melissa, whose investigative reporting had exposed systemic issues beyond just my ex-husband. Samantha, whose legal brilliance had secured not just my financial future but precedent-setting protections for others. David, whose mentorship had become something tentatively more. And surprisingly, Ashley, whose courage in coming forward had completed the picture of Christian's manipulations. As we raised our glasses, I found myself reflecting on the journey from that anniversary night to this moment of genuine connection. To clear vision, I toasted. And to the breaking of glass houses that needed to fall. Around the table, understanding smiles reflected back at me. The prison of appearances I'd helped maintain for 5 years had indeed had glass walls that needed breaking all along. The shattering had been public and painful, but the clarity I'd found through the broken glass was worth every cut and scar. For the first time since I'd forwarded that damning photo to the restaurant's display screen during Christian's toast, I felt not just free but grateful, for the revelation, for the collapse, and most of all, for the woman I'd discovered beneath the rubble of my perfectly curated former life.